Hello everyone, I just wanted to first say thank you for watching these videos and following along. Today we're about to dive into the process of modeling our shock absorber. Let's dive in. Bring up the gizmo once more and select Polycube from the gear. Then press delete loops. Unmask the bottom face and move it down. Let's keep on masking and repositioning with the gizmo. Use the slice curve brush to add in some edge loops. Then grab the Move Infinite Depth brush to adjust the position. Now we can press Ctrl W to group visible. From the ZModeler brush, select Bevel Edge Loop Complete. Mask the model, fire up the gizmo and choose Cylinder 3D from the gear. Then invert the mask and split unmasked points. Go ahead and move the cylinder up and scale it down. Then scale it in the Z-axis. Bring out the slice curve brush again to add an edge loop. From the ZModeler brush, choose Q-Mesh Polygroup All. We're going to want to clip the cylinder back a little. Then slice in an edge loop. Bevel the edge loop and Q-Mesh the polygroup island. Go ahead and flip the cylinder on the X-axis and then weld it. Press QC50. Then mask the model, bring up the gizmo and select Cylinder 3D from the gear. Invert the mask and split unmasked points. Rotate the cylinder 90 degrees and move it down a bit. From the ZModeler brush, let's start by selecting Inset a Single Poly. Then turn on Symmetry in the X-axis. Now switch it to Q-Mesh a Single Poly. Then go back to Inset a Single Poly and Alt-Tag those 4 faces. Add in 2 edge loops. Then Alt-Tag the faces to Q-Mesh. Next, Alt-Tag the side faces and Q-Mesh them. Keep holding Shift to switch to a move operation. Hold Ctrl while Q-meshing to extract the faces. Q-mesh again to add some thickness. Then Q-mesh the poly while holding Shift to move it. Now we can select Transpose Island. Let's go ahead and rotate and move it into place. Hold Ctrl and move the gizmo to duplicate. Again, rotate and move it into position. Let's switch to Q-Mesh, a single poly, and hold Shift to move. Press QC50 to lay down the groundwork for the creases. Now we can add some supporting loops and set the crease level to 3. And again, added some edge loops to quad it up. From the ZModeler brush, select Q-mesh a single poly and slide the top edge back. Press Ctrl W to group visible. Now we can grab the Move Infinite Depth brush to make some adjustments. Next, scale the cylinder up. Then press Apply and delete the lower subdivisions. Jump to the next subtool and uncrease the edge loops. Press Apply again and delete the lower subdivisions. Move on to the next subtool and press Ctrl W. Press Apply and delete the lower subdivisions. Go ahead and merge the subtools down and group visible. Now we want to set the poly count to 1 million and press Dynamesh. Then we can use the picker to set the resolution. Now it's time to run a polish. Let's go ahead and mask the model, pop up the gizmo, and from the gear, select Polycube. Scale it down and move it into place. Then go ahead and clear the mask and Dynamesh it. Unmask the cube and select the Clip Curve brush. Now we can change it to Transpose Smart and control click on the flat surface to mask. Invert the mask and blur it. Now we can move it up and clear the mask. Finally, Dynamesh and run a polish. Fire up the gizmo and pick Cylinder 3D from the gear. Then press Unify. Unmask the bottom and scale it up. For the polygon action, select Poly Group, go with Poly Loop and Checker for the target. Now we can Q-mesh Polygroup All. Tap Alt to change the polygroup color. Now select Scale Polygroup All. Select the top and bottom polygroups and press Auto Groups. Grab the 14 sides IMM. Q-mesh the polygroup island while holding Shift. Then we can scale the polygroup island Press QC50 and set up the creases. Now set your crease level to 3. Let's go ahead and add in some edge loops to quad it up. Next, Q-mesh the flat island. Then hold Ctrl to extract the faces. Q-mesh again to give it some thickness. Then unmask the top and move it up. Invert the mask and use the gizmo to extrude it down. Let's go ahead and scale it down a bit and extrude again. Now we can clear the mask and move the top up a bit. Let's go ahead and press Ctrl W to group visible. Add in some edge loops to quad it up. Then uncrease the new edge loop. Slide the edge loop up just a tad, then Q-mesh while holding the Shift key to move the flat island. Polygroup the 2 poly loops and Q-mesh them while holding the Shift key. One last time, press Ctrl W to group visible. Let's check out the shock absorber set. Some components like the cylinder here are just too straightforward to go into detail about. The cylinder tucked inside the spring is simply an extrusion. The brace, just a bit of basic bridging between 2 cylinders. And we've already talked through creating the spring in the exhaust videos, so no need to retread old ground. Back to our primary workspace, you'll find the shock absorber snuggled right behind the engine. We're missing some fasteners, but no worries, we'll pop those in later. This brace is a cylinder with a couple of faces extruded, super simple to do. By now, we spent well over 20 hours together, so going forward, I'll be bypassing the really easy modeling bits. Think cylinders with simple extrusions or anything that doesn't need more than a few steps. However, I'll still show you what I've skipped over at the end of each video, which honestly won't be much. We're closing in on the finish line, just 2 foot pegs, the handlebars, and a handful of other bits left to tackle.